Chialson met with Soryang over a cup of tea. He informed Soryang that he had heard everything from Hueyun, and thus Soryang would be treated as their son-in-law. Soryang mentioned he thought he was supposed to wait 3 years. Chialson interrupted, saying the wedding would naturally occur when Soryang came of age. Soryang tried to clarify, but Hueyun's mother enthusiastically welcomed him into the family, introducing herself as his mother-in-law. Museong was pleased too, stating that Hueyun had found a suitable match and their clan would prosper even more. Soryang looked at Hueyun, confused by the sudden acceptance when there were supposed to be conditions for marriage. He thought they might have accepted him without much discussion. Deciding to go along with it, he said he looked forward to everyone's guidance. Soryang was puzzled when Museong suggested to Chialson that they should get started immediately. Chialson informed Soryang that before he could learn the Tang clan poison arts, there was something they needed to show him. Soryang asked what it was. The elders smirked, and Chialson revealed it was the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, something he was sure Soryang would love. They had been waiting for this moment, for Soryang, as a family member, to take his first steps into the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, a treasured tradition for the entire family. Soryang addressed Museong as grandfather and expressed his eagerness. Soryang was excited, assuming it was a place where 10,000 kinds of poisons gathered. But as he looked at Hueyun's profile, he couldn't help but be in awe of her beauty. Soryang remembered the saying that beauties are best admired from the side, and at that moment, it felt like a photo shoot come to life. He blushed, which amused his in-laws. They smirked knowingly. Chialson joked that at this rate, Soryang might wear out his daughter's face, pointing out that Hueyun was his woman now, yet he gazed at her so absent-mindedly. His mother-in-law remarked that Soryang seemed completely smitten with Hueyun. Both Hueyun and Soryang turned red. Hueyun told him to watch where he was walking, and Soryang stuttered a reply of agreement. A short while later, they stood before a large door. 2 men with bulging muscles stood proudly on either side. They reminded Soryang of Yupin and Ipin for some reason. A man in the Tang clan's robe stood in the center and welcomed the Grand Patriarch. Museong ordered them to open the gate, as he intended to show his grandson-in-law the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. The men complied. In his mind, Soryang noted how the security seemed absurdly tight for something out of the Middle Ages. The man in the black robe announced the opening of the gates, and the 2 muscular men exerted all their strength to push open the heavy door. The man in black remarked that the gate was opened quicker that day. Soryang was surprised by this observation. Once the gate was fully opened, the 2 muscular men looked exhausted. The man in black invited them inside. Chialson glanced at Soryang briefly. As they walked through, Soryang felt compelled to look at the tired, muscular men. To offer some consolation, Chialson explained that the iron gate was forged from Kunyu steel, sourced from the southern wilderness. Even opening the gate was considered an honor. They arrived inside the hall, a treasure trove where the Tang clan of Sichuan stored all its poisons. Called the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, it held exactly that many poisons. Museong cautioned Soryang to be careful and not touch anything recklessly. Soryang assured him he understood. He also confirmed if the hall indeed contained 10,000 poisons. Chialson explained that the poisons are meticulously categorized, including paralysis poisons, sleep poisons, and many more. The elders enjoyed teasing the young couple. It was clear when Chialson asked Hueyun to explain the poisons to Soryang, knowing he would enjoy hearing it from her. Embarrassment washed over Hueyun and Soryang as they blushed. Nonetheless, Hueyun took on the task. Hueyun took Soryang's hand and led him to the Tang clan's strongest poison. The elders watched their interaction with fondness. She started by pointing out the Kai dissipating poison. This poison is feared by martial artists because, once inhaled, it renders their energy unusable. She advised Soryang to be extremely cautious. She also showed him the elementary canal necrotizing poison, spirit-destroying poison, bloody pulp poison, and 7-step soul-snatching poison. She explained that while all these are potent, the Tang clan's strongest poison is something else entirely. She handed him a small seed, leaving Soryang puzzled. In his mind, he compared it to a tiger bean. Hueyun explained that it's the most powerful poison in existence, aside from the venoms of the 10 great venomous creatures. She added that it's a plant symbolizing the Tang clan, called the seed of the castor plant. Soryang was intrigued by its castor seed. He thought of ricin, a highly potent toxalbumin, where just 2 milligrams can be lethal to an adult. It was famously used in the umbrella assassination of Bulgarian dissidents during the Cold War. Ricin is a poison 100,000 times stronger than cyanide. Soryang remarked that it's the poison closest to the Tang clan's ideal, colorless, odorless, tasteless, and formless. That's why they named it the rarest and most precious of all poisons, the golden poison. When used to kill, it's known as as a golden death. Hueun told him to remember that the strongest poison isn't the one that inflicts the most agony or causes the most gruesome death. The strongest poison is the one that kills silently, swiftly, and without leaving a trace. Hueun shared that the Sichuan Tang clan's poison arts strive for this ideal of stealth and certainty. In Soryang's mind, they seemed like a clan of assassins. Museong told them that was enough for now and invited Soryang to see the venomous beasts he had been eager to see. Museong even offered that if Soryang was interested, he could oversee their care, with the clan providing full support for anything he needed. To Soryang, this translated to them supporting his hobby, which made him look very excited. As they were about to leave, the patriarch was urgently called. Pai arrived, panting from running. They asked him what was the matter. Pai said the patriarch needed to head to Black Tortoise Pavilion immediately. The patriarch asked why. Pai started to explain about the clan elder, but Museong cut him off in anger, demanding to know what those bastards were up to now. Soryang wondered if they were referring to the branch family members Wien mentioned. Pai informed them there were two issues. First, the medicine sent to the Sichuan city lord didn't work as expected, and he sent back a letter full of complaints. Before Pai could reveal the second issue, he glanced at Soryang, who sighed. Pai then revealed it was about the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, and Museong anticipated that rumors were already spreading. They decided to leave for now, but not without Museong insisting that Soryang accompany them. At the Black Tortoise Pavilion, the elders noticed the patriarch and began complaining about the critical decision he made on his own. They protested his choice of pairing Hueun with an orphan of unknown origins. This triggered Chialson. He was displeased with them referring to Soryang as an orphan with unknown origins. Chialson began emitting a green aura from his body, questioning if they were insulting his son-in-law. The elders of the clan insisted their concerns were valid. Museong, clearly agitated, declared that he was the one who made the decision and asked if they had a problem with it. The elders were taken aback and turned to the Grand Patriarch, hoping he would reason with the patriarch. They argued that entrusting the management of the 10,000 poisons to an outsider with unproven abilities was absurd. Museong reiterated that he had given his approval. During this exchange, Hueun was conscious of Soryang and whispered an apology to him. Soryang initially thought, "Goodness," he sighed, realizing she was worried about him when it should be the other way around. Everyone was surprised when they heard Soryang speak up, saying, "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt your conversation." He proposed that since the issue stemmed from doubts about his abilities, he should demonstrate his skills to prove himself to the clan elders. The elders were caught off guard. Soryang suggested he could resolve the issue with the Sichuan city lord to prove his worth. Hueun asked him in a hushed tone what he was trying to do. Soryang wasn't typically the type to step forward and cause a fuss, but he wouldn't let anyone disturb his peaceful life as a pet owner. He had left the elders speechless. Eventually, they became agitated and lectured him for interrupting the elders' conversation. They challenged him, asking if he even knew what the Sichuan city lord's letter said before barging in. They called him an insolent nobody and reported him to the clan head for daring to meddle. The elders used this opportunity to argue for a son-in-law from a respectable, established martial clan instead. Chialson's wife was starting to get annoyed. Inside, Soryang thought about how these old codgers sounded more absurd the more they talked. Back when he was Spicy Fabry, he had more than 1 million total subscribers and over 3,000 viewers per stream on average. He pointed out that it seemed the elders still refused to recognize him as the son-in-law of the Sichuan Tang clan. In essence, Soryang was still considered a guest. With Spicy Fiber's large fan base, he was used to handling disruptive trolls who caused chaos without reason. Soryang emphasized that he had saved the precious daughter of the Sichuan Tang clan, Lady Hueun. Moreover, he had defeated Bloodhand Rakshasa, Takun Yang, and saved the patriarch's life. He challenged the elders, questioning if insulting a guest and benefactor was part of the Sichuan Tang clan's etiquette. Inside, Soryang knew the malice he faced from the elders was nothing compared to the trolling he dealt with as a streamer. It was almost cute by comparison. The elders were embarrassed and admitted they had spoken hastily and out of desperation. In his mind, Soryang found them pathetic. The Grand Patriarch was impressed by Soryang. One elder suggested that claiming to have taken down Takun Yang was too much. The Patriarch affirmed Soryang's claims, showing them a document. The elder gasped upon seeing it, and their jaws dropped when they realized it was the Bloodhand Poison Art Secret Manual. Written in blood, it was authentic and belonged to the blood sect. The Patriarch encouraged Soryang to show the elders the spotted centipedes. Soryang gently tapped his chest, inviting the elders to look. The 3 baby spotted centipedes emerged happily. The elders felt uneasy at the sight. The Patriarch explained that they were offspring of the blue spotted centipede and proudly shared that his son-in-law was raising studying them. He recounted how these little ones were the ones who bit Takun Yang to death. The elders were incredulous, confirming with the patriarch that the young warrior had indeed managed to control a blue spot centipede. The patriarchs Soryang and Gyup had devilish grins as they teased the elders. Chiolson pointed out that referring to Soryang as a young warrior was a sign they hadn't accepted him as his son-in-law. Soryang even managed to warn them jokingly that if they bit, they'd end up as black and lifeless as Takun Yang. The elders were taken aback, quickly denying any refusal to accept Soryang. They scrambled for excuses, saying there was a process, and it was natural for them to hesitate. The Grand Patriarch sighed and decided to set aside the topic of their son-in-law for now. He inquired why Soryang couldn't enter the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. The elders argued that Soryang hadn't fully become part of the family yet. Additionally, they were reluctant to entrust the Hall of 10,000 Poisons to a young warrior who hadn't even reached the age of maturity. The Grand Patriarch suggested a simple solution. He requested Soryang to demonstrate his ability. Soryang grinned and stated that to prove his worthiness to the Sichuan Tang clan, he would do it their way, using poison. The elders were taken aback, misunderstanding him to mean he would poison the Lord of Sichuan province. They called him foolish for considering poisoning the Lord instead of sending medicine. Soryang was confused, as he thought the Sichuan Tang clan specialized in poison. The next day, the Grand Patriarch informed Soryang that he would begin learning the Tang clan's martial art, the 5 Venoms returning technique. Soryang asked if this would involve physical training. The Grand Patriarch explained that as he practiced martial arts, his body would naturally adapt to align with the techniques he learned. Museong elaborated that the Tang clan prioritized practicality, so Soryang would learn skills that could be immediately applied in real situations. Museong then unpacked various weapons, including arrows, daggers, and shuriken. They started with throwable concealed weapons like needles, coins, darts, powder, daggers, and throwing knives. Though there were many unconventional concealed weapons, most could be categorized into 5 types. Museong asked Soryang if he knew which one was the easiest to handle. Soryang guessed it was the dagger or throwing knife, and he was correct. Museong then asked which one he thought was the most difficult. Soryang guessed that powder would be the hardest to handle since it had to be scattered effectively. However, Museong informed him that it was actually the needle that posed the greatest challenge. Soryang assumed it was because of its small and thin form, making it difficult to throw accurately. Museong explained it wasn't just that. The real challenge was that Soryang had to remember the exact positions where he threw the needles. To illustrate, Museong decided to demonstrate. He took out a brush, separated the head from the handle, and made a sudden throwing motion. The bristles floated in the air, transforming into needles that rained down to the ground. Soryang was amazed as the bristles embedded themselves like needles, continuing to fall. Museong explained that the Tang clan had a hidden weapon technique called sky-obscuring flower rain. This secret art involved hundreds or even thousands of needles falling like a rain of flowers, covering the area. Soryang thought that fighting in an area filled with needles meant he had to be very cautious. He politely pointed out that if the entire area was filled with needles, there wouldn't be much space to move. Museong laughed, confirming that was exactly the point. Soryang needed to remember the positions of the needles to avoid becoming a victim of his own technique. To Soryang, this seemed unbelievable. Soryang began to sweat as he confirmed with Museong whether he needed to remember the positions of needles that deflected opponents or those that fell out of place. Museong replied affirmatively. Museong informed him that, with the 5 poisons body, Soryang would need to memorize at least 100 positions to start. Soryang turned pale at the thought. After the demonstration, he collapsed face down on the ground. Lady Hueun then appeared. She asked if she looked prepared, wearing a beekeeping suit since she heard he was going to catch a hornet. She wondered if it was unnecessary. Soryang assured her that it wasn't unnecessary. He was planning to wait for a hornet, but with their gear, they could catch it themselves. Hueun double-checked if he really intended to wait for the hornet to come. Soryang replied that she would understand once they got there. He asked if she knew where the hornet's nest was. Hueun confirmed that she had found one nearby so they could head there immediately. Soryang also donned a beekeeping suit. As they prepared, Hueun brought up the letter sent to the city lord of Sichuan province and asked if he had seen it. Soryang confirmed he had. Hueun expressed concern that, being young, Soryang might not fully grasp the letter's contents. Blushing, Soryang mentioned that yang kai in men is quite important. Hueun felt embarrassed and told him that was enough, realizing he was aware of the situation. The major issue troubling the city lord of Sichuan was erectile dysfunction. His rod was no longer getting hard. Hueun became suspicious of Soryang's knowledge, given his age. Soryang excused it by saying he had lived alone for some time. time. Embarrassed, Hue-eun quickened her pace. A few hours later, they arrived at the forest. Soryang got distracted by the creatures there, and Hue-eun had to keep him focused until they reached their destination. It looked like a mini cave, an ideal place for hornets. Hue-eun inquired about the significance of finding a bee without a hive. As they put on their head protectors, Soryang explained. He told her it meant that while they came looking for hornets, they wouldn't actually be capturing any. Hue-eun was puzzled as they approached the hole. Soryang explained that the venomous insect they were after could be found in smaller, weaker hives. Hue-eun was unaware of this, but fortunately, the hive had what they needed. An insect emerged, and Soryang captured it with chopsticks. They hadn't come to catch a hornet. This little insect was their target. This small creature would solve the Sichuan city lord's troubles. Hue-eun asked about the bug, wondering if it was a ground beetle. She had guessed correctly, and Soryang learned that the bug they caught in the giant hornet nest was referred to as a ground beetle in that world. In the Central Plains, it was known as a ground beetle, but in the modern era, it was called a blister beetle. Hue-eun asked if it was normal for ground beetles to be found in a hornet nest. Soryang explained that their life cycle was quite peculiar. Blister beetles have an unusual method of reproduction. Unlike most insects that either guard the spot where they lay eggs or create a safe environment for their eggs to hatch, the blister beetle simply lays eggs wherever it pleases. There was a humorous skit where the blister beetle told the boss to wait because she needed to drop some eggs before heading out. Anywhere would do, with no fuss or frills. It just lays them. The only consideration it shows is dumping them all in one spot. When the miracle happens and the blister beetle larvae hatch, they start crawling toward the highest place nearby. Once the larvae reach the top, they do something bizarre. They cluster together and imitate a flower. Bees mistake this fake flower for the real thing and approach it. The moment a bee gets close enough, the entire swarm jumps onto the carpenter bee's body, and that's it. Game over. The carpenter bee's home is as good as gone. Soryang wasn't sure why they favored giant hornet nests, but apparently it was the most suitable environment for the ground beetle larvae to grow. Hue-eun felt sorry for the giant hornet, but Soryang replied that there wasn't much that could be done about it. Hue-eun knew the bug caused burns on the skin and had heard that eating too much of it could even be fatal. Soryang confirmed this. The orange liquid dripping from a blister beetle contains a toxic substance called cantharidin. When this substance touches the skin, it creates blisters similar to burns. Hue-eun blushed and asked if it really had that effect. Soryang confirmed that the substance could indeed immediately raise a man's rod, which made Hue-eun feel embarrassed and prompt him to stop explaining further. She encouraged him to head back to the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. Soryang wanted to catch a few more beetles, but they had secured the ground beetle, also known as the blister beetle. Afterward, they returned to the hall and instructed the warriors on how to prepare the medicine. Soryang told them to listen carefully. He instructed them to dry the ground beetle and grind it into powder, noting that 1/10 of that powder is toxic. The poison becomes life-threatening when 3 mo of it are ingested. He explained that if a person consumes 3/10 of 1 mo of the poison per guan body weight, about half of those who ingest it will die. So, Soryang requested that they prepare medicine with 1/10 of 1 mo of the poison. That would be roughly the equivalent of 10 drops of liquid, with 1 mo being 3.75 milligrams and 1 guan equaling 3.75 kilograms. He asked if that made sense. Deep down, Soryang felt that his brain was about to explode from all the calculations. One warrior removed his mask and remarked that Soryang's explanations were incredibly detailed, and they never expected him to be skilled in mathematics. The warrior assured Soryang that they would make sure to succeed. Soryang expressed his dependence on them. Later that night, Museong was talking to Hue-eun about how surreal it was that ground beetles had such effects. Museong mentioned that it made him consider re-evaluating the poisons in the Tang clan's arsenal. Hue-eun agreed. Museong then brought up Soryang's proficiency in math. Hue-eun shared how Soryang calculated the solution's concentration and estimated it to match the weight of 10 drops of liquid, which was amazing. Museong admitted that while he considered himself knowledgeable in poisons, Soryang was on a different level. The more he learned about Soryang, the more he realized what a gem the young man was. He teased Hue-eun, asking if she liked Soryang even more now. Hue-eun blushed deeply and expressed her regret for being hasty in the beginning. Museong reassured her that making up for it going forward was what truly mattered. Museong then asked how they planned to test the medicine once it was complete. Hue-eun blushed even more, turning as red as a tomato. She mentioned that the branch family elders were saying Soryang had been too insolent. Soryang humorously suggested testing the medicine by raising the clan elders straight up. Museong was taken aback but found it amusing and laughed out loud. The next day, everyone gathered in a hall. The clan elders were skeptical. A warrior handed Soryang a wooden box, explaining that he had blended licorice powder and honey to make it sweeter and easier to consume. Soryang was impressed by the attention to detail. Soryang asked if the warrior had prepared it exactly as instructed. The warrior confirmed he had followed the instructions carefully. Other clan members scoffed, questioning how amazing it could possibly be. The patriarch ordered silence and asked Soryang how he intended to prove the medicine's efficacy. Soryang feigned surprise at the question. The clan elders insisted it was natural to confirm its effectiveness. One elder shouted they would never send unverified medicine to the city lord of Sichuan. Another elder added that if something went wrong, it could lead to a major disaster. Soryang acknowledged there was no other choice. The warrior understood what this meant. The clan elders were confused as the warrior handed them the medicine, appearing annoyed as if Soryang expected them to test it themselves. A loud elder questioned if Soryang even knew what it was. Another elder remarked that Soryang had played outside for so long it seemed to have turned his insides black. Soryang grinned and called out to his grandfather. Museong asked what Soryang needed. Soryang reminded Museong of his earlier statement that those who mastered the Tang clan's martial arts were never afraid of poison. Museong played along and affirmed it. Soryang then pointed out that the elder's hesitation suggested fear. Museong agreed with him again. Soryang used reverse psychology, taunting the great elders of the clan, who had surely mastered 100 poisons. He expressed that surely those elders weren't afraid of something as trivial as ground beetle poison. This angered the elders, prompting one to split the medicine in two. They claimed they had nothing to fear from such low-grade poison. They took the medicine, asserting that Soryang underestimated them. They warned him that if it did nothing, he would face consequences. An elder proclaimed that they would uphold the clan's laws and principles. They chewed the medicine. A silence followed. Then they smirked, declaring that nothing was happening. But soon the elder felt his manhood awaken. The long slumber of the snake was over. They were embarrassed. And so that day, the laws and principles of the clan were set straight, pun intended. It happened magnificently. The medicine was sent to the city lord of Sichuan, proving to be excellent. A little while later, the elders walked the hall holding their pants away from them to hide the evidence. I remember walking like that when the time came. Anyway, Soryang told Museong that, just as he said, provoking the elders with something related to poison made them fall for it immediately. Museong understood that they were the type of people who had nothing left but their pride, so naturally, it happened. However, Museong also recognized that their actions stemmed from concern for the clan. He advised Soryang not to resent them too much. Museong remarked that, in the end, they were all one family. Soryang replied that he understood. Just then, Hueun hurriedly approached them, reporting that something terrible had happened. They asked Hueun what was wrong, and she explained that their children were acting strange. Soryang blushed, feeling confused, while Museong became stern and grabbed him by the collar. Museong demanded to know what she meant by children and why they had them. Soryang was drenched in cold sweat. Museong held Soryang by the back of his neck, questioning why they had children when they hadn't even had their wedding ceremony yet. Hueun clarified that she was referring to the spotted centipedes Soryang was raising, not human children. Soryang was stunned, his surprise beyond words. Recently, he'd been focused on physical training sessions and had asked Hueun to take care of the centipedes. He realized he'd completely forgotten about them and was worried something had happened to his babies. He asked to see them. As he reached toward Hueun, thinking she kept them there, Hueun squealed that they weren't with her. Museong was speechless. A moment later, they found the 3 blue-spotted centipedes looking brown and weak. Soryang had a handprint on his face, a funny reminder of his earlier actions. Soryang stared at the centipedes intensely, while Museong wondered if they had just fallen from Hueun's body with a thud. Hueun mentioned that they seemed fine earlier, but was now concerned they might be sick. Their color looked pale, and their shells seemed odd. Soryang reassured her that there was no reason to worry, explaining it was called shedding. Creatures like centipedes with hard shells shed them when they grow bigger, and that's likely what was happening. Museong asked if they were already shedding their shells. Soryang replied that it would happen soon. Just then, one of the little ones moved strangely and its head emerged. They were all impressed by the sight. It was quite amazing to watch as the other 2 centipedes began shedding their shells as well. They successfully shed their old shells and were now fully out. Hueun noticed they looked almost twice as big as before. She asked if the little ones had names. Soryang realized they didn't, and his thinking face was quite amusing. Even funnier were the names he came up with, number 1, number 2, and number 3. Hueun found it so silly that she refused to accept them. She reasoned that since spotted centipedes are said to turn into dragons after living for 1,000 years, they needed dignified, dragon-worthy names. Soryang playfully argued that there was no way a spotted centipede would turn into a dragon, even after 1,000 years. Museong joined in, joking that a 1,000-year-old spotted centipede is indeed called a dragon. Soryang realized Museong must have taught Huayan that. He then seriously considered their names. He decided to name them Nova, Myra, and Grace. Nova symbolized a beginning, Myra meant fragrance, and Grace represented elegance or gentleness. Huayan was delighted and didn't object, as naming the children was traditionally the father's responsibility. The spotted centipedes now had their names. A full day later, the centipedes returned to cling to Soryang. His body didn't feel completely dry yet, but he was well enough to move around. However, he still felt a bit awkward. The centipedes were now heavier. They had grown from the size of a thick sausage to as large as his forearm. They seemed to find his embrace too tight, so they coiled snugly around his arms and waist. While he was lying there snuggling with the centipedes, he overheard a conversation. Two men were passing by. One of them, holding a loaded pouch, remarked that the Sichuan Tang clan was always so extravagant. The two men decided to head to the brothel, laughing about how easy it was to make money. Soryang's curiosity was piqued by their conversation. At the pavilion, Chiolson shared some great news. The medicine they sent to the city lord of Sichuan had worked exceptionally well, and the city lord had sent a message of gratitude along with a generous reward. Soryang and Huayan were delighted to hear this. Chiolson was proud and happy to have gained such benefits so soon after accepting Soryang as his son-in-law. Soryang had truly accomplished something remarkable. Soryang was glad he could help. As a result, Chiolson suggested granting Soryang one of his elixirs, knowing that if he called it a reward, Soryang might refuse out of modesty. Soryang recalled his grandpa saying that an elixir enhances internal energy. Huayan asked what kind of elixir it was. Chiolson replied that it wasn't anything extraordinary, just the honey of the golden-haired king bee. In Soryang's mind, he thought it sounded like regular honey. However, knowing how crucial internal energy is for becoming a martial master, he decided to accept it. He was about to thank his father-in-law when Huayan interrupted. She pointed out that since Chiolson was rewarding Soryang, she questioned why it was just honey. Chiolson got nervous seeing Huayan's assertive demeanor. She argued that Soryang's achievement was no small feat. Even if the golden-haired king bee is a mid-level venomous creature, honey is considered the lowest grade among elixirs. She insisted that Chiolson shouldn't be stingy when rewarding Soryang for such a significant achievement, making Soryang feel shy. She scolded her father, saying he should grant something that provides a year's worth of internal energy instead of an elixir offering just 2 months' worth. Chiolson was saddened and reasoned that it was still an elixir and had been expensive to obtain. Huayan was further triggered, arguing that compared to Soryang's contributions, the reward was a mere pittance. Chiolson found himself in a tough spot. Soryang asked about the golden-haired king bee. Chiolson explained it was a mid-tier venomous creature sometimes found in jungles, about the size of a small dog. Consuming its honey was said to grant internal energy equivalent to 2 full months of meditation. Imagining the bee's size, Soryang was both excited and amused, but Huayan reigned in his thoughts. She expressed her frustration on Soryang's behalf. Chiolson clarified that his intention wasn't to belittle Soryang's achievements. He thought Soryang might enjoy seeing the golden-haired king bee in person. This got Soryang excited, and he asked if Chiolson was suggesting he could see the bee himself. That was indeed what Chiolson had in mind. Internally, Soryang interpreted this as an invitation to harvest the honey himself. He'd done similar things back in his YouTuber days. With excitement, they headed to the door. Soryang shared that he was practically an expert when it came to bees. Chiolson knew Soryang would like the idea. Soryang asked what the golden-haired king bee looked like. Chiolson simply replied that it looked like a bee. Huayan could only sigh, and so their honey harvesting journey began. Chiolson had provided them with premium information, so they assumed there wouldn't be any competitors. But when they arrived, they found 2 clans fighting. Apparently, both had bought the same information. One clan asked if the person they bought it from had scruffy hair and a big mole. The other clan confirmed it was the same guy, but insisted they wouldn't back down easily. Hearing the descriptions, Soryang remembered the 2 guys he'd overheard. He realized those 2 had been selling the information everywhere. One guy, angered by the scammers, shouted, "How dare you insult the Sichuan Tang clan in Sichuan?" His loud voice and the mention of the Sichuan Tang clan made the others nervous. The peaceful honey harvesting trip had turned into something far from calm. Before Soryang left for his first journey outside, Chiolson had warned him to be cautious. As a member of their family and the Tang clan, he should never forget who he was. Soryang politely agreed. Chiolson then looked to his side, prompting Soryang to turn his head as well. There were men lined up in front of them. Chiolson informed Soryang that he would be leading those people, as it was time for him to learn to manage others. Soryang felt flustered by the responsibility. He thought Hueun should be the one leading. Chiolson called him silly, explaining that since Hueun was his partner, Soryang, by extension, held the highest authority in the group. Hearing the word partner, Soryang blushed. Hueun had faith that he would do well and promised to help him along the way. He assured her he would do his best. But now, amidst the chaos, he wondered what to do. He asked the man with him, Wolfgang, the leader of the Venom Blood Unit, what they should do in this situation. He wondered if sharing the information was a better option. Wolfgang was displeased that anyone dared to share the Tang clan's information. Hueun agreed, noting that whoever did it had some nerve. She was seriously upset, her intimidating aura clear as she questioned the selling of information purchased by the Sichuan Tang clan to others. Those from other clans recognized her as the poisonous flower of the 3 flowers of Murim. One man was shocked to see a direct descendant of the Tang clan, the poisonous flower, present in person. He was compelled to greet her. He represented the Central Wind sect and clarified they had no intention of interfering with the Tang clan's affairs. He stated they would withdraw. The Noble Origin sect also decided to withdraw. Even though it pained them, the Jade Ghost Slayer followed suit. One of them vowed to catch the rat responsible and skin him alive. They all hurriedly retreated. Soryang realized the influence of the Sichuan Tang clan and asked Wolfgang if the situation was resolved. Wolfgang replied that it wasn't, suspecting those unorthodox groups wouldn't back off easily. Wolfgang suggested setting up a camp nearby and taking shifts to keep watch, knowing those men were likely hiding and waiting for the right moment. He instructed Gyup to find out where they had set up camp. Soryang looked worried, but Hueun assured him it would be okay. He was more concerned about his honeybee. They hid behind a boulder watching the bees. The bees actually looked cute. They appeared to be wearing faux fur on their bodies as several flew inside the trunk. Soryang got excited upon seeing the golden-haired king bees. Hueun admitted it was her first time seeing them too, noting their size. Soryang found them adorable. Hueun was amazed by their fluffy fur, and Wolfgang was pleased to see them as well. Soryang noticed that the colony seemed small. It appeared there were only a few hundred of them, but considering their size, that made sense. Hueun asked about colonies. Soryang explained that a colony is a group of bees. Typically, a small hive would have about 5,000 to 7,000 bees. Hueun was surprised Soryang could tell that without entering the hive. Soryang replied that he could estimate by observing how many bees went in and out of the entrance. Just then, someone appeared behind them. It was Pai. He reported they had located the unorthodox groups. Wolfgang asked where they were. Pai hesitated at first, but as Wolfgang expected, those groups had set up their camp on the opposite side. They didn't seem to be doing much, but if something happened, they'd definitely make a move. Wolfgang decided to wait until nightfall to harvest the honey using the Tang clan's method. Soryang asked about the method the Tang clan used. Wolfgang explained that burning mugwort leaves would produce smoke that calms the bees, allowing them to harvest the honey. Soryang thought it was an excellent method. However, Pai was concerned because the wind was blowing towards them, which complicated their plan. Soryang quickly thought of something. Pai asked if it was something clever. Soryang explained that with the wind blowing towards them, it would mask their scent. He decided to take this opportunity to quickly visit the hive. He was already on his way when Hueun grabbed his shirt to stop him, warning that it was dangerous because the golden-haired king bee was a mid-level venomous creature. But Soryang was eager to go. He insisted he would just touch it once and come back. As he struggled to break free from Hueun's grip, a pebble fell and rolled towards the hive, which they instantly realized was bad news. In the blink of an eye, the colony swarmed out of the hive. Hueun quickly grabbed Soryang and they made a run for it. Later, they got a thorough scolding for their recklessness. At dusk, Soryang was still contemplating another approach. If they lit the fire against the wind, they risked being caught between the unorthodox groups and the hive. The golden-haired king bee was different from bees he knew. These bees could detect ground vibrations from over 30 kilometers away, something even ground bees couldn't do. Hueun found him. She mentioned that the kids had finished their meal and were trying to wander off, so she brought them to him. Soryang thanked her. He gently told the little ones to behave. Hueun sat beside him, making him flustered. She asked if he had made any progress. He replied that he needed to observe a bit more. She admitted she felt like she was pressuring him and apologized for it, encouraging him to take his time and not feel burdened. Soryang felt even more pressure after Hueun's encouragement. Then Hueun noticed some monkeys on the opposite side of the old tree. The monkeys were noisy, and one seemed particularly agitated. Soryang called out to Hueun. He asked if she smelled something sweet. Hueun picked up on the scent, and Soryang realized it could be pheromones. Soryang quickly told her they needed to leave because the bees were about to swarm. Hueun grabbed him and ran, leaping high to put some distance between them and the hive. She held held Soryang by his armpits and they watched as the bees swarmed out of the hive. Their target was the fallen monkeys and the bees feasted on the corpses. It was a close call for the pair. Hueun was curious about how Soryang knew the golden-haired king bees were about to attack, as he warned her before they even heard the buzzing. He explained it was because of the scent. Hueun finally noticed the faint smell of magnolia. Soryang was impressed that she could distinguish the scent of pheromones. He asked if she recognized the earlier scent, and she confirmed it smelled like a magnolia flower. Excited to have found the answer, Soryang laughed like a maniac, causing Hueun to blush because his hands were on her shoulders. With a devilish grin, Soryang said he had thought of a way to deal with those unorthodox groups who were after his honeybees. Meanwhile, the men from different clans were gathered around a bonfire, relaxing. They drank liquor and feasted on meat. One asked when they thought the Tang clan would come to gather the honey. Another replied it was hard to say. 3 days ago, the Tang clan had been wandering everywhere, but now things had gone quiet. Someone speculated that the clan might make a move soon, while another gave a vague response that it could be. Another man questioned whether beehives could really be that lucrative. A man, slightly annoyed by the question, commented that he seemed like he'd been living under a rock. He explained that candles made from the golden-haired king bee's beeswax were treasures used exclusively by the imperial family. He assumed the Tang clan would only take the honey and leave, allowing them to take the remaining beehives. The men had evil schemes in mind for after the Tang clan was wiped out. Someone brought up the notorious poisoner, the 3 flowers of Murim. They decided to keep an eye on her to ensure she didn't die, enjoying the idea since she was a beauty. Their lecherous nature was apparent as they expressed excitement at the thought, even joking that one of them might end up as the Tang clan's son-in-law. But then they stopped when someone noticed a scent. It was a pleasant smell, and one of them thought it was the poisonous flower's scent. They assumed her natural scent was as intoxicating as that. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupted them. They looked up to see something forming in the sky. They were terrified and confused, realizing it was a swarm of golden-haired bees. They immediately ran in panic. The bees chased after them, and they screamed as the bees attacked. The mixture creating the scent was scattered on the ground. It was positioned like a trail. Soryang, Hueun, and Wolfgang watched from behind the bushes. Hueun and Wolfgang were surprised it worked. The bees were heading in one direction. Hueun asked Soryang what he did, not expecting the bees to get furious over the scent of flowers. Soryang explained that he had ordered the bees to launch a full-scale attack by using a simple trick. Hueun was puzzled since Soryang had only crushed some flowers and fruits, sprinkling their juice around. Soryang clarified that the scent acted as a trigger for an attack order. He explained that pheromones are chemical signals used by animals of the same species to communicate, especially social insects like ants and wasps. They rely heavily on these signals. The pheromone Soryang used was the exact scent bees released to signal an attack, known as isoamyl acetate. Hueun asked if he meant that magnolias emit the same scent bees used to signal an attack, finding it fascinating. But Soryang was more intrigued by her ability to recognize the scent. Hueun explained that, because the Tang clan specializes in poisons, she was sensitive to scents. The timing was perfect. With the golden-haired king bees off on their attack, Soryang decided it was time to enter the hive and harvest the honey. They cautiously approached. Soryang brought a makeshift incense wrapped in leaves. Wolfgang warned that it was dangerous and offered to take the lead. They were all impressed by the size of the hive. It was amazing. The honeycombs hung like a large golden chandelier from the ceiling, creating a beautiful sight. Fortunately, the bees had left, allowing Soryang, Hueun, and Wolfgang to enter. Soryang noticed something peculiar. There was no honey at all. Wolfgang was surprised, inspecting the honeycomb and confirming it was just as Soryang had predicted. It was empty, which was unusual. Soryang realized there were no eggs in the hive either. Wolfgang asked if this had something to do with the hive being empty of honey. Soryang explained that the bees were preparing to migrate from the start. That would be why they consumed all the stored honey and carried it in their stomachs. He theorized that they sensed too many human presences nearby, prompting them to prepare to leave. Hueun agreed with Soryang's explanation that when bees prepare to migrate, they stop laying eggs as they can't care for larvae. Then Soryang noticed something intriguing. He spotted the back end of a bee. With a large grin, he asked Wolfgang how long he could maintain his mobility arts without rest. Wolfgang replied that by pacing himself and running steadily, he could last about half a day. Wolfgang inquired why Soryang asked. Suddenly, Pai appeared, reporting that the golden-haired bees were returning, urging Soryang to leave immediately. They quickly ran for it. Wolfgang advised Soryang to give up while Hueun rushed to his side. She grabbed his shirt and urged him to hurry. Pai panicked, telling them to get out quickly. Something was bulging from Soryang's chest. Time passed, and it was indeed a close call. Hueun was grateful they they managed to escape before the bees returned. She couldn't finish her sentence as she got distracted, asking what Soryang had on his chest. Soryang's immediate reaction was to reveal the little bee's head poking out from his clothing. Soryang explained it was the queen bee of the golden-haired king bees. Since there was no honey, he decided to bring the one who could make it. Upon hearing that, everyone looked nervous and turned pale, beads of sweat forming on their faces. The queen bee made a cute bee noise. With a devilish smirk, Soryang told Wolfgang that the bees would soon realize their queen was missing and would start chasing them. Instead of being worried, Soryang seemed delighted, gently rubbing the queen bee's head. He told them to run, and so began the life or death chase. Wolfgang carried Soryang on his back, and they ran as fast as they could. The queen bee was fussy. Soryang soothed it, promising to take the queen somewhere peaceful where people wouldn't bother them. It had been a few days since the honeybee race of death began. During that time, the group pushed themselves to their limits, cutting back on sleep and fully exerting their mobility arts. They were all out of breath and energy. By the time they reached their destination, a few warriors from the Venom Blood unit had already fallen behind. Soryang promised himself that he would demand to learn mobility arts when they returned. One of the warriors tripped and fell, prompting another to announce that another one had fallen. The fallen warrior was Huang Duryang of the Venom Blood unit. He looked half dead on the ground, with dark circles under his eyes and snot and saliva dripping from his open mouth. Soryang also had dark circles. He was hopeful that once the queen bee was far enough from the colony, they wouldn't be able to attack. Wolfgang was starting to lose hope and asked Soryang if they could really escape. Soryang gave a vague answer. 3 days later, another warrior fell face down, apologizing to Soryang as he could no longer move. Soryang was worried for Wolfgang. Hueyun decided she would carry Soryang instead. Soryang suggested he could run on his own, but Hueyun, despite her haggard appearance, shyly promised she could do it. She declared that a member of the Tang clan never gives up. At the entrance of the Tang clan's house, 2 guards were stationed. They noticed someone approaching and recognized their young lady. Hueyun and Soryang supported each other as they walked. The guards' jaws dropped at their appearance. Family members were called immediately. With all the commotion, Museong and Chialson came out. They were stunned to see the state of the two. Hueyun looked truly worn out. Chialson laid Hueyun's head on his lap as he began to heal her. Furious, he demanded an explanation from Soryang. Soryang told him to calm down, explaining that Hueyun was simply exhausted after using mobility arts for 10 days without a break. Soryang was in a hurry and urged everyone to head to the training grounds. Museong was confused until Soryang pulled the queen bee from his clothing. He explained that the other bees would soon swarm there, so they needed to head to the ancient tree in the training grounds. Everyone was stunned, except for Museong, who was amused by Soryang's antics. Chialson was in disbelief. He had sent Soryang to fetch honey, and yet he returned with the queen bee. Museong placed a reassuring hand on Soryang's shoulder and declared they would go. Suddenly, Museong jumped high while carrying Soryang, who screamed out loud. Museong moved swiftly. When Soryang screamed again, the old man asked what was wrong. Soryang told him that the bees were swarming towards them. Museong saw the swarm and asked if Soryang had brought all those bees with him. They were almost at their destination, so they hurried. Soryang's body struggled to keep up with the speed, but thankfully, Museong's grip kept him secure. They eventually arrived at the ancient tree. Soryang approached the tree and explained to the golden-haired queen bee that this was the new home he had mentioned. He gently released the queen bee, asking, "Not bad, right?" The queen bee made a bye noise, seemingly understanding him. She inspected the tree and turned to Soryang, looking excited as if to say he was right. Soryang wondered if she really liked it. Museong suggested they leave for now since the bees were arriving. The clan members watched as the colony of bees flew above them. The golden-haired queen bee made bee noises, calling them. The bees headed for the tree. Museong was amazed, expressing that in all his years, he had never seen anything like it before. Mission accomplished. The golden-haired queen bee had been successfully captured, and moments later, the dog-sized bees were seen drinking sugar water. The exhausted bees were being revitalized with the sweet treat. After all, there's a saying that bonds are built over food, and goodwill begins with a meal. They were fortunate that there was something akin to refined sugar in this world, so it worked out well. Soryang hoped the little feast would help reduce the bees' wariness towards them. It would be even better if the bees started recognizing Soryang as their master. Suddenly, Soryang shouted that he forgot something. Chialson and Museong eyed him suspiciously and asked what it was. Soryang nervously inquired about Hueyun. Chialson was a bit annoyed that Soryang only thought of her now, but replied that he had instructed others to take Hueyun to her mother to rest. Chialson questioned if they really used mobility arts all the way from the forest to the house with the bees following. Soryang nervously confirmed and apologized, explaining they barely managed 4 hours of sleep a day, spending the rest running. Museong suddenly realized something and asked Soryang about the members of the Venom Blood Unit. Soryang, sweating nervously, admitted that the members had collapsed somewhere along the roadside. He promised to go pick them up. Eventually, the members of the Venom Blood Unit returned safely to their families. In Hueyun's room, she was awake and energetic enough to sit up. Soryang was by her side. Hueyun happily mentioned that the golden-haired bees had recovered their strength. Soryang shared that the bees were currently gathering nectar from the poisonous flowers of Tang Clan Mountain. Hueyun found it adorable. Suddenly, someone rushed in, calling for Soryang in a panic. Pai informed him that he needed to come outside immediately. He told Soryang something was wrong with the golden-haired bees. They seemed to be searching for something. Soryang and Hueyun quickly went outside to see what was happening. The bees were scattered all over until they spotted Soryang and clung onto him. Suddenly, they began pulling on his shirt. Soryang was confused by their behavior. The pulling lifted him off the ground, and Hueyun was surprised to see Soryang being flown by the swarm of bees. In the air, Soryang looked amusing with his legs straight and arms spread in a T shape. Eventually, the bees dropped him. Soryang asked them why they were fussing around their hive. He thought something must be wrong. The bees nudged him, and he got the message. They wanted him inside. Looking around, he saw they had already built part of the hive and were working hard to gather honey. Then he noticed a bee approaching. It was the queen bee. Soryang held out his hands, asking the queen bee if she wanted a lift. He couldn't move as the other bees clung to him, with one even pinching his cheeks. He looked at the queen bee, who appeared elegant and cute. The author really did a great job describing her. The queen bee closed her eyes and moved towards Soryang's mouth. He panicked but was silenced as the queen bee kissed him on the lips. He felt something placed in his mouth and instinctively swallowed it. The other bees stopped clinging to him and the queen bee finished her kiss. Soryang turned red as a tomato. Embarrassed, he yelled at the queen bee, saying it was his first kiss and asked what she was doing. Then Soryang felt something was wrong. He collapsed on the ground, experiencing excruciating pain. In his mind, he wondered what the queen bee had fed him. From his perspective, the queen bee had a mysterious look on her face. The large bees watched as Soryang struggled on the ground, a reddish aura spreading across his body, like an intense heat. Along with this discomfort, it felt like there was an itch inside him. The heat overwhelmed him, making him foam at the mouth and nose, grinding his teeth and sweating heavily. His heartbeat was racing. Despite the intense heat, as if he were on fire, he slowly reached out to try and touch the queen bee. With little strength left, his last words before passing out were a question about what she had made him eat, and then he fainted. With his eyes still closed, he heard his name being called. Hueyun was asking her grandfather what was happening to him, showing her concern. Museong, stroking his beard and with his vast experience, commented that he must have swallowed a very potent elixir. After hearing this, Soryang passed out again. Museong began to guide his Kai to help him. Shortly after, Hueyun cared for him with a warm towel. She wiped his face. Sitting on the bed with messy hair, he asked where he was. She told him he was in the clan's medical wing. Fixing her hair, she explained that when they saw him, he was being dragged by the golden-haired king bees. She and her grandfather ran to the hive and found him unconscious, so they brought him to the medical wing. She asked if he remembered anything that had happened. He sighed, putting his hand on his face, a bit upset. He thought about his first kiss in that world. Hueyun sensed something was wrong from his expression and asked if he was okay or if something was wrong with his body. She also asked if he wanted her to call her grandfather. He looked at his hands, sighed, and said no. He mentioned that the queen bee fed him the same food she ate, which he thought caused the situation. Curious, Hueyun asked what he had eaten. He said he didn't know the exact name, but if he had to name it, he would call it the king bee's elixir. Hueyun was surprised. With a smile, he explained that the worker bees collect nectar and pollen to feed themselves. Only the worker bees, dedicated to their work, consume this nectar and pollen. After explaining this, she asked if that was the case, then what does the queen bee eat? He casually replied that the queen bee feeds exclusively on the king bee's elixir, made by the workers from birth to death. In other words, the jelly that the queen bee forced him to eat was royal jelly. Hueyun understood the situation. It is the exclusive food of the queen bee throughout her life. But Soryang furthermore mentioned that the king bee's elixir has a special effect, leaving her surprised. He explained that normal worker bees live around a month and a half, but the queen bee, eating the king bee's elixir, can live up to 60 times longer. Then he asked if this wasn't incredible. Overwhelmed with information, she told him to calm down. It was a lot to take in. With a sigh, she said she understood. The mystery was solved. She explained that the internal cultivation method he practiced is the 5 venoms return technique. It's just a beginner's technique, so he wouldn't be able to absorb all the elixir's power. But since the golden-haired king bee's honey contains 2 months of internal energy, he basically absorbed 60 times that amount, which is equivalent to 10 years of internal energy. Then she congratulated him on his lucky encounter. Soryang began to feel a bit of energy while repeating 10 years of internal energy. Hueun, a bit nervous and fiddling with her hair, suggested he check the silver mirror afterward. Blushing, she averted her gaze and mentioned there might be other effects of the queen bee's elixir. Curious, he asked what other effects. While scratching his face in doubt, he asked about the silver mirror. He picked up the mirror and, looking at his reflection, noticed something strange. His skin was so smooth it even shone. Still examining himself, he wondered if royal jelly always had such effects. Upon touching his face, he was surprised to find his skin soft and smooth, almost like that of a woman. While touching his face, he considered that perhaps royal jelly, the food of the queen bee, had caused some effects that were not very pleasant for him, making him worry that he might have turned into a girl. He looked around to clear his doubts. Then he looked between his pants and, with a sigh of relief, he lay down on the ground, happy he hadn't lost his most precious possession. Lying on the ground, he recalls Hueun mentioning that if her grandfather hadn't guided his Kai, something disastrous might have happened. He realized he should thank her grandfather since he was on the brink of death and was saved. He leaves the medical wing and walks through the clan, noticing everyone staring at him. Wondering why so many people are giving him strange looks today, he questions if it's because his internal energy increased. The stares and whispers bother him, so he decides to escape, running off while others laugh as he goes. He arrives at the clan's restaurant and peeks through the door. He spots his father-in-law, future wife, mother-in-law, and the old man dining. His mother-in-law quickly notices him and, pleased, comments on how handsome her son-in-law is. She asks how he is feeling. He greets them, saying he is fine and apologizes for worrying them. His mother-in-law, aware of the situation, says it's okay since he had such a fortunate encounter, making it a reason to celebrate. She decides to tease her daughter a bit, saying she must be envious of Soryang's skin. Embarrassed, she quickly invites him to sit. Soryang, also embarrassed, agrees. He joins the table for a huge banquet where everyone enjoys themselves. His father-in-law asks if he is feeling well after everything that happened. He confirms he is and apologizes again for causing concern. He expresses his gratitude to the grandfather for taking care of him. Museong, smiling, congratulates him on his lucky encounter. Seeing curiosity on everyone's faces, his father-in-law asks if he could explain what happened. He mentions he heard a little about the queen bee's elixir from wine, but wants to know the full story. He hesitates, scratching his face, but finally explains that the golden-haired queen bee seemed to like her new home and rewarded him for his kindness. As he gestures, he says she dragged him into the hive and fed him the king bee's elixir, which he believes caused all the confusion. To his surprise, his mother-in-law comments that even mid-level venomous creatures know how to show gratitude, finding it fascinating. Museong was equally surprised, asking if there's any way to get the king bee's elixir again. He mentions that if they could, it would greatly benefit the clan. Kaelson notes that even the honey from the golden-haired bees would be an incredible treasure, but the queen bee's elixir would be an extraordinary blessing. His mother-in-law, excited, agrees and asks her son-in-law if he could get more of the elixir, leaving everyone at the table confused by her sudden enthusiasm. Hueun then asks him if he could obtain more of this elixir. Soryang thinks it over. If they were just regular bees, they could create several queen cells and trick the worker bees into producing royal jelly. However, with the intelligent golden-haired bees, they would be turned into hives quickly. Besides, royal jelly is essentially baby food produced by worker bees, but what he consumed came directly from the queen. He ponders whether what he ate might not even be the same substance, making him think more about the situation. He wonders if he should be honest at that moment. Finally, he decides to say that he thinks it wouldn't be possible to get more of the elixir. This prompts Museong and his mother-in-law to ask why it wouldn't be possible. Soryang explains that even if someone could consume it, he doesn't know if anyone would want to. Curious, Kaelson asks if the taste is bad or if it has a strange smell. With seriousness, he replies that it's not about the taste or smell. Sweating cold, he reveals that the king bee's elixir comes directly from the queen's mouth and that the only way to receive it is through direct contact with the queen. He explains that the method involves forming a connection by joining lips with the queen, with her tongue transferring the elixir. Everyone is shocked. Museong, shouting, asks in disbelief, "A kiss on the queen bee's mouth?" His mother-in-law is left speechless. Kaelson, even more shocked, concludes that they must assume it's impossible to get the elixir, unless it's the protagonist since he was favored by the queen bee. For anyone else, it would be impossible. Soon, his fiancée, understanding what happened, drops her chopsticks, outraged. She asks, "A kiss on the mouth?" with a terrifying expression and a murderous look. She says his name, hinting that he kissed the queen bee. It was night, the moon was illuminating a river, and somewhere there was a temple. Someone whose hand was full of scars was observing the landscape. It was the leader of the Murim alliance, the Emperor of the Fist, called Ju Young-hak. While he was deep in his thoughts, someone knocked on his door, informing him that they had brought tea. This caught Young-hak's attention, who came out of his trance and gave them permission to enter. A beautiful servant brought tea, informing him that she had prepared white dew tea from Sichuan. This aroused Young-hak's curiosity, who was somewhat surprised. He sat down to have tea, reminding her that this was the tea from his hometown, and while the servant was serving it in the cup, she replied that she was aware it was a famous tea from Sichuan. The emperor thanked her and decided to make sure to drink it well. He picked up the cup of tea, and the maid began to watch closely, and just as he was about to take his first sip, someone knocked on the door and interrupted the alliance leader's tea session. It was the military advisor Zheng Hu. Immediately, the emperor placed the cup on the table, and with a confused expression asked what he was doing here at this hour and gave him permission to enter. Zheng Hu, a man with long hair, entered and greeted the emperor respectfully, apologizing for interrupting him. He was a very handsome man. He had come to inform them that they had received a message from the Tang Sichuan clan, thinking it would be better to let the emperor know immediately. With a calm smile, the emperor asked him not to worry about interrupting the tea session. He had come in haste, so it must be an important matter. Zheng Hu approached the emperor and placed a red scroll on the table, revealing that Rakshasa of the bloody hand, Tak Un-yang, had died. His head had been cut off by the Tang clan, obtaining the secret manual of the poisonous art of the bloody hand. This made the emperor burst into fury. Shattering the teacup into pieces, he clenched his fist and his body began to tremble with rage. He wanted to know where and how they had obtained the manual. Zheng Hu casually revealed that, previously, Tak Un-yang had been struck by the divine sovereign of myriad poisons, and his whereabouts were unknown. And after that, it was said that he had gone to Hainan Island to live in seclusion. With an enthusiastic smile, he informed the emperor that there was a much more interesting story than this. It was said that a young warrior and his poisonous creatures had killed Tak Un-yang. The emperor was in shock, as he had never before heard of anyone being capable of using poisonous creatures. Zheng Hu sat in front of the emperor explaining that he had heard many interesting stories. He was sure that this was a story that even the leader would be interested in. He decided to explain it in detail, but the servant began to stare at him intently, exuding a suffocating aura. In the patriarch's hall of the Tang clan of Sichuan, everyone was seated at a table, including Soryang, Huayan, her mother, and the great patriarch. One of the elders asked if it was true that there were people who had sold information to other places besides them. The other elder was furious. He could not believe there were people tarnishing the reputation of the clan. Soryang began to whisper. He was somewhat confused to see that they did not dare to say anything harsh to his father-in-law. With a smile, Huayan replied that it was normal. The patriarch of the clan knew that they had dared to damage the reputation of the clan. The elders of the collateral branches were also angry, and after all, they were a family. He had already requested that this matter be investigated. He planned to go to Yingchuan himself. One of the elders, somewhat curious, extended his hand, asking what poison the patriarch was going to use. The patriarch casually explained that first, they had to use soul-destroying poison, then blood-burning poison, and finally intestine-necrotizing poison. His eyes were shining with malice. When they were in such agony that their blood burned, their internal organs would melt, and when the soul was about to dissolve, he would finish them off with the 7-step soul-snatching poison. Soryang was in shock since this method was typical of an assassin. It was a cocktail of poisons. The patriarch decided to leave immediately and asked one of his aides to summon the poison annihilation unit. His aide nodded. A while later, the poison annihilation unit gathered in front of the temple. They were men wearing masks and hoods. The patriarch asked his son-in-law to take care of himself, promising he would return soon. Soryang showed respect and asked his father-in-law to be careful. The patriarch was somewhat confused, revealing that it was their enemies who should be careful. Kaelson and the poison annihilation unit set out to punish the bastards. Pointing at the men, Soryang asked if they were the poison annihilation unit. It was the first time he had seen them since he had been here. Huayan affirmed yes, mentioning that they did quite hard work. With a smile, she said their job was mainly erasing people, and for this reason they were called the poison annihilation unit. Our boy was in shock, questioning if this really counted as hard work. While they were distracted, someone coughed. It was the elders of the Tang clan. Soryang and Huayan greeted them with respect. The elders asked if the boy had had a fortuitous encounter. Soryang nodded his head. A question came to his mind. He didn't know if these people were looking for the royal jelly of golden-haired queen bees. The reality was somewhat different. The elders were somewhat nervous as they had come to ask him for a favor. Soryang, somewhat curious, asked what they wanted. He asked if by any chance the favor was about about the royal bees, the elders became even more nervous and refused since there was no reason why they would covet such a thing. Soryang became curious, and the elders began to feel ashamed. One of them approached our boy and asked him to bring his ear closer. Whispering, the elder asked if Soryang remembered the medicine of the ground beetle. Our boy had been the one who created it and had the authority. Soryang began to smile, then took out the medicine from the ground beetle and started juggling. He was having a hard time adapting to the clan in many ways, but if they, the elders, helped him in various ways, there would be nothing he couldn't give them. The elders began to laugh, promising to help their son-in-law from now on. Huion was somewhat disappointed. The great patriarch came out of the temple and saw the elders laughing heartily. Just as our boy was about to hand over the medicine from the ground beetle, the great patriarch asked what they were all talking about so cheerfully. They panicked and then started dancing to cover it up, explaining that it was just a friendly gathering. The plan worked since the great patriarch believed them, thinking they had finally realized Soryang's true value. Huion was somewhat disappointed and furious. One of the men opened the door and reported that there was a big problem. Everyone became curious, and the great patriarch asked what the problem was. Pai revealed that Lord Sichuan was on the verge of death. Upon hearing this, everyone was in shock and panic. Soryang questioned if he had been using the medicine correctly, and Pai confirmed it. After seeing the effect of the medicine, Sichuan took a new concubine and took more than double the amount Soryang had suggested. Our boy started sweating at the thought of the consequences. The great patriarch was somewhat disappointed and decided to go take a look. Soryang was the only man left in the house, so he entrusted him with the mission of protecting the women. Our boy said goodbye to him and assumed responsibility. The great patriarch left, and Soryang was calm, thinking that nothing could happen while they were away. Several hours later, night fell. Soryang and Huion were sitting on a bench. She asked how he was finding the dual origin art of the 10 poisons that he had been learning. He replied that it was not as difficult to understand now as it had been at the beginning. If the technique of the return of the 5 poisons felt like a single large orb moving inside the body, then the dual origin art of the 10 poisons was more like a 2-cylinder engine. Huion realized that now our boy must have developed some tolerance to common poisons, revealing that furthermore, he could release his internal energy directly or imbue it into objects. Soryang was speechless. He felt intrigued, and the desire to try his new technique consumed him. They prepared a straw dummy. Soryang unsheathed a dagger and closed his eyes to concentrate. A powerful green energy began to emerge from his body. The first step was to move the internal energy from left to right, and then rotate both orbs in the same direction. Once the Kai energy circulated through his body, he opened his eyes and forcefully threw the dagger at the straw dummy. The dagger moved like lightning, piercing through the straw dummy without much effort. Soryang was happy, and his fiancée praised him for being able to imbue his Kai into the dagger. The knife, emitting energy, stuck in the wall right in front of 2 masked men. At first, they thought they had been caught and decided to eliminate them, but then upon seeing the straw dummy, they realized it had been a coincidence. One of them was holding a book. It was the Blood Hand Poison Art Secret Manual. Although it was a copy, their work was already done, so they decided to leave here as soon as possible and return before something troublesome happened. They thought that the guards of the Tang clan were idiots for having neglected the security of the training hall, and thanks to their negligence, escaping was going to be a piece of cake. But then, something happened, and a pink aroma began to spread through the air, making the men tense up. It was a sweet aroma, and the men didn't know where it came from. Right above them was the queen bee, who started staring at them intently, knowing that these guys were intruders.
While it was raining, screams began to be heard throughout the area. Soryang was in shock, not knowing what was happening. While on the other side, Huion looked toward the direction of the screams and realized that someone was here. Looking toward the bushes, they saw men dressed as ninjas. 2 were hiding and 1 was standing. The queen bee started attacking the man, who was somewhat confused since he didn't know why there was a bee in the training wing. Soryang and Huion began to observe this, and it didn't take them long to realize that they were intruders. Huion knew she had to act. With a furious expression, she dashed towards the intruders, asking Soryang to shoot the arrow. She moved so quickly that she left dust all along the way. Soryang put his arms in front of his face in surprise. He didn't know what she was planning to do. The queen bee was biting one of the intruders' ears, who grabbed her and with tears in his eyes asked for help from the others to get her off him. One of the ninjas turned towards Soryang and upon seeing Huion approaching, panicked and gave the order to his companions to retreat. The queen bee clung onto the intruder. The other 2 jumped and began scattering. Huion started running quickly toward them, asking them to stop. Upon seeing that 2 intruders wanted to flee, she filled herself with determination and pulled out a whip. Using all her strength, she struck the ground, creating a small explosion. But luckily, the intruders jumped and dodged the attack. Her eyes widened in surprise upon seeing that they had evaded her lash. The man who was being attacked by the queen bee drew his sword and began advancing toward her. The queen bee clung to his head. It was adorable. Soryong couldn't help but panic. He started shouting, asking Lady Huan to be careful. While the queen was sucking the man's head, he unleashed a powerful attack, but to his surprise, Huan blocked the attack without much effort using the whip. She began staring at the man with a piercing gaze. Just before the man had time to react, she counterattacked, and when the man realized it, the whip was in front of his face. The attack created a small explosion on the man's body, and the queen bee flew away. After defeating her opponent, she moved gracefully and appeared behind him. The man lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Soryong was open-mouthed and somewhat worried about her. She turned to him and with a calm expression asked him not to worry as she was fine. The man's body began to emit an evil energy, causing him terrible pain. The queen bee sat on Soryong's shoulder, his gaze fixed on the body. He panicked, not knowing who this guy was or if he was dead. Huan put the whip inside her clothes, and the strange energy emerging from the man's body caught her attention. She began to observe in silence with a curious expression. Within seconds, the man lost his life, and she revealed that this guy had bitten poison to kill himself, surely because he had something he wanted to hide. Not far from them, someone sensed the presence of the intruders and started shouting to alert the guards. Huan turned around and decided to organize a pursuit team and begin the hunt. Our boy started sweating. He was somewhat surprised by her attitude. Huan asked him to follow her along with Gu Pi, the leader of the Venom Blood unit. It was nighttime, and the forest was illuminated by torches. Soryong, Pi, and several other members of the clan were chasing after the intruders through the forest. Pi, who was at the front, knew they couldn't have gone far. With a determined expression, he made it clear that they must capture them at all costs. The others did not seem tired, but Soryong was. He began to sweat and focused on using his two-cylinder engine. By doing this, he forcefully stomped the ground, breaking it into pieces. His body sank into the ground, and he started screaming like a madman. Because of this, small centipedes came out of his clothes. He turned around and with a confused expression asked if he was okay. Soryong created a large hole in the ground. P and the others stopped chasing the intruders and approached the hole to help Soryong. Thanks to their help, he got out of the hole and thanked them since he thought he was done for. He turned his head back and something caught his attention. Beneath him there were a bunch of green snakes, staring at him intently. Soryong couldn't help but start sweating and feeling fear, realizing it was a snake nest. He began observing the snakes and explained that snakes often gathered where the yin kai was strong, particularly during this season. They were unusually aggressive, so he asked Soryong to stay alert. Soryong couldn't help but sweat in fear. One of the snakes opened its mouth, ready to attack. For him, this was strange since tiger-striped water snakes typically weren't so hostile. The sky was filled with black clouds. Soryong admitted it was his fault they had been delayed. He knew it was going to rain, so he suggested moving quickly. T and the other man turned around, thinking he was right. They started running again since they couldn't lose sight of the intruders. Not far from them, a light could be seen. P turned to Soryong mentioning that they had found them. The masked men were furious. They were in a dead-end alley. Behind there was a rocky mountain. And while the sky was thundering, P and the others arrived, surrounding them. P and the others put their hands inside their clothes, announcing that this was where the escape ended. Soryong remained silent, while on the other side, one of the men's gaze fixed on the intruders, giving the order to the others, tighten the encirclement. The members of Unit Venom Blood drew their kunais, and upon seeing this, the masked men also unsheathed their weapons. Unit Venom Blood began advancing toward them, ready to attack. While the man wielding a sword was moving toward them, two men threw kunais, but one of the ninjas deflected them using his dagger. The man attacked with force and his sword and the ninja's daggers clashed against each other. They were furious to see how strong this guy was. One of the ninjas moved quickly and gave a strong kick to the man's face, making him drop his weapon. They ordered him to get out of their way. Seeing this, the member of the Venom Blood unit couldn't help but panic. While the ninjas were distracted, something started approaching them at great speed. It was P. He tried to attack by surprise, but the ninja crouched quickly, dodging the attack. P began to observe in silence. The ninja took small jumps to retreat, but P used his skill called Triple Mirage Kill and threw his kunai towards the ninja. The kunai started flying towards the ninja and then exploded only to shoot into 3 kunais. Upon seeing this, the ninja was speechless. Luckily, he blocked 2 of the daggers, but one of them stuck in his shoulder, causing him severe pain. He put his hand over the wound. P began to approach, calling him a lucky bastard. 2 of the ninjas had already fallen and only one remained standing. but he was injured. P and the others started walking toward him. This guy should consider himself fortunate that the rain had diluted the poison on P's kunai. P began staring at the ninja with a furious gaze, but then someone started laughing upon seeing so many pitiful insects gathered together. P and the others stopped in their tracks, somewhat confused. P went on alert and with a serious gaze asked who they were. At that moment, someone descended from the top of the rocky mountain, landing in front of the ninja, shattering the ground into pieces. He was an old man with a beard, with an evil smile. He began to observe Soryong and the others with a murderous gaze. Upon feeling his energy, P couldn't help but go on alert, revealing that he was a martial arts master, giving the order to his men to step back. The old man's body began to emit a malignant energy. He stood up and with a smile started walking towards them. He asked the ninja if they had recovered it. In response, the ninja closed his eyes and took out the book he was hiding under his clothes, explaining that it was not the original but a copy recorded by the Tang clan. This caught Soryong's attention, leaving him somewhat surprised. His eyes widened when he remembered that the great patriarch had told him that the book was something only bad people looked at. His attention fixed on the book, and it didn't take long for him to realize that this was a copy of the bad book his grandfather was reading last time. They had tied up one of the ninja's bodies. Soryong, who was sitting next to him, revealed to P that the book was a copy of Blood Hand Poison Art's secret manual, leaving him somewhat surprised. His eyes filled with rage, causing him to clench his teeth tightly. The ninja handed the book to the old man, who opened it and began reading it with a sinister smile. P clenched his fist out of anger, not knowing what kind of people would dare to covet something so sinister. He wanted the old man to reveal his identity. With a smile, the old man began flipping through page by page. It was just as he had suspected. Since it was a copy, the book contained the forms of the techniques but lacked the critical formulas. Even so, it was more than enough. After reading it, he closed the book. Although it was a bit premature, there was no better way to announce their return. He gave permission to the ninja called Bloody Glory to unleash the martial arts of cultivation, giving him the order not to leave anyone alive. Bloody Glory cracked his fingers and with a gaze full of determination, promised to fulfill the order. Next to him was the corpse of one of his companions. He extended his hand toward it and concentrated. A red energy began to emerge from his hand, and not long after, blood shot out from the corpse toward his hand. P's eyes widened in fear upon realizing what technique this guy was using. While on the other side, Soryong put his hands on his head. He couldn't believe he had just seen something so terrifying. The ninja's eyes began to glow, and with a smile, he started absorbing the blood from the corpse through his hand. In the blink of an eye, the kunai that was lodged in his shoulder fell to the ground, and his wound healed completely. The old man began to smile like a madman. He summoned a ball of energy in his hand, and with an evil gaze revealed that he was none other than an elder of the blood cult.